myself. Yes, I can. Hi, guys.
I like how you get like a little doorbell sound.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Evening, folks. It's Sean.
Hey, Sean.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
It looks like we're waiting for a few more people, so we're going to just hold on.
Megan's just trying to find the Zoom link. She just texted.
All right, we'll give her a moment. I'm not sure. Let's just take a quick peek. I don't know that we have everybody. I don't see Peter on yet as well.
Peter is having trouble with the link, so I was trying to send it to him. So he and I just connected. Oh, you're on.
I think
Okay,
we got
there he
it.
is.
I'm not
Okay, and
sure.
I think Megan's on too now. All right, I think we've got everybody we need.
Just waiting on Karen Hirsch. She's just got
She's
the
here.
links.
Why am I not showing?
She is.
Karen's on.
Yeah, for some reason or another, the link I had was not the one that allowed me access to,
All right.
proper.
Peter, I'm not seeing you on the participant list.
No, I understand that. I don't know why I clicked on
We
the
need that.
link.
Michael, can you take a look and see what's going on for Peter?
Shh. No.
I'm not seeing him either. If he exits and comes back in, it should be fine.
All right, Peter, would you mind
Okay,
trying
see
that?
you
We
later,
just want to make
guys.
sure we can get you for. We'll be here.
Great, let's do all our business now.
Like a normal meeting.
Mike,
Yes, Peter.
you see me now? I don't.
I wonder if it's because,
Yeah, did you send a custom link to everybody, Mike?
You should have received something in your inbox. I just resent it to you maybe 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, okay. And it's custom to me, right?
It's custom to being the
every
panelist.
Every employee is, every link is custom. Okay, fine. So that's probably the reason. Here, let me get out. I'll be back in a minute.
All right, for those attendees, just please give us a moment while we work out the technical difficulties. By the way, I want it noted that I walked down to Havemeyer and took a picture with the lovely spring flowers.
Phew, because the snow was making me sad.
We can bring that back.
No, please don't.
We have a different weather pattern in backcountry, so I'm not sure we've actually had flowers like that yet, but that's nice.
You know, try looking out your window.
I don't think so.
All right, I see Peter's coming onto the list, so I think the link worked. We'll wait till he confirms.
I'm here.
Great. All right, so what we're going to do is call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education. I'd ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and feel free to try to join me. Got a flag here. Give me 1 second. There we go. Oh, thank you, Michael. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, can we get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Downey. Is there a
Christina.
second? Ms.
Karen
Olson
Burke,
is the
I'll second
second. All right, all those in favor of approving the meeting agenda, I'm going to do a roll call vote and then we'll do our introduction. So I'm Peter Bernstein. That's a yes. Ms. Stowe?
Kathleen Stowe, yes.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Ms. Downey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Kowalski?
yes.
Ms. Olson? And
Yes.
Mr. Sherr?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so before we start, just want to thank everybody for what I believe is now our 4th virtual Board of Education meeting. This is a special meeting. Before we start, just pointing out a couple of things to help keep us on track. So the meeting's being conducted pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 7B. I don't know how many we're up to now. The meeting is going to be recorded and posted on our webpage and our YouTube channel. The hits just keep on coming. The agenda for the meeting is found on our board doc site. You can get to it via the Greenwich Schools website. This is a special meeting. We're not taking public comments. Members of the public have and can continue to send emails to the Board of Education via our singular board address, boardofedmembers@greenwich.k12.ct.us. Thank you for all of your notes. The meeting tonight is actually just going to be a discussion between the board members, the superintendent, and some of her staff. I'd ask that the participants state their name every time they talk. I'll be calling on you, but if I forget, please chime in. When you're not speaking, please stay on mute. That means you, Ms. Kowalski and Ms. Stowe, I can see that. And Michael will try to help us with that. I'm a violator as well. We'll be using the raise the hand function for our discussion, so I'd ask that you signal your intent to speak by raising your hand. I'll try to call on people in turn. I'd ask the board members try to keep their comments concise as best we can. Any voting, as we just did for the meeting agenda, we're going to do by roll call vote. So with that, we're going to turn to our first action item, which is our COVID grading policy. So Ms. Stowe, would you like to make a motion? You're muted.
Okay, yes, let's see. I think I'm just gonna stay off. No. I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 6146.19 as presented.
I'm Karen Hirsch. I'll second it.
Great. All right, Ms. Stowe, I'm going to turn it back over to you for discussion.
Yep, okay, I just wanted to give you guys a little background. Obviously, this was coming back to us. We saw this policy last Thursday. It's now an action item. As everyone knows, we had a PGC meeting on Tuesday with my favorite new trio, Ralph, Rick, Judy, and of course our PGC members. I feel like I've gotten to know Judy. I always knew Ralph. I've gotten to know Judy and Rick only through Zoom, and I look forward to actually meeting them in real time one day. But they did a great job. They worked tirelessly over the weekend, obviously, to get these regulations put together so that we could understand sort of the mechanics of how this policy would play out. It wasn't noted on the cover sheet, and I think it's important for everyone to know, since we are the policy committee, we are a policy board. We write the policies, and then once the policies are approved, the procedures or the regulations, they used to be called, are then drawn up by the administration and then implemented, right? They're the ones that get into the weeds and then actually go off and sort of act on our policies. We did this one a little bit differently because since it was a new policy, we wanted to understand, or many of us wanted to understand the mechanics of how it was going to work out. And so we're not approving that. We're still just approving the policy, but this hopefully lays out a lot of the questions and concerns that we heard last Thursday. So with that, I just wanted to explain that to the public. This is now on the table and open for discussion. So obviously Rick, Ralph, and Judy are ready to hear any questions we might have.
All right, I don't know, Ralph or Rick or Judy, if you wanted to add anything to that. I know there were some questions from the last time that you had done some work on. Mr. Mayo.
Ralph Mayo, headmaster, Greenwich High School. Just wanted to thank Rick Piotrowski and Judy for all their hard work over the last few days to get this regulation written. We also worked with other principals from other schools, and they helped us a great deal, especially Stafford Thomas over at Staples High School in Westport. So I just want to give people credit where credit is due. So that's all I wanted to say, Peter.
Great, thank you. All right, Ms. Kowalski, I see your hand up.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So I appreciate all the work that was done and short notice, and I think that the policy in principle is a good idea in giving the option for for a student to be able to take their classes pass fail. One of the questions I had relates to, I guess, a disclosure piece, understanding that what appears on the report card at the end of the year is the academic grade for the year. And I'm wondering what decisions are being made around the disclosure of those GPAs where the students have chosen to take the class pass fail.
So Ralph, Rick, Judy, I don't know if you want to answer that, or PGC. Ralph, go ahead.
Karen, your questions about the report card is different from the transcript. The report card is going to show all the grades from all 4 quarters and the final grades.
Yeah, sorry, Ralph, then I may have interposed those, and forgive my inintelligence in that.
No. But the transcript, Karen, only shows final grades. That's the only thing that a Greenwich High School transcript shows. And we have to remember that our transcripts are stored somewhere in the Greenwich Public Schools for 60 years, our high school transcripts. So we felt that putting an asterisk on a transcript and having it someone come back to it 10, 15 years later was doing a disservice to our students. We are going to put something in our Greenwich High School profile that's mailed out with all the transcripts that says that we did offer this alternative this year. And if they have questions, they can certainly contact the guidance department. Judy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we feel it's most equitable to be able to put a notation on the profile so that no one individual transcript is flagged, for both short-term and long-term. The final grade a student earns will represent the actual work that they did with hopefully minimal impact on this, time where they're distance learning.
All right, Ms. Kirsch, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to, I know we went over this before and I know you guys made an adjustment as a notation in the guidance, but I just wanted to just make sure that it was clear to everybody that there are some courses at the high school that don't have finals and that their grading will be revised to follow the path of all of the courses. Is that correct? For each quarter will be 22.5% with the midterm at 10.
Rick, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, that is accurate. It's always been our practice. The standard practice was, if there was a midterm and final exam, it was 2020, 10, 2020, 10. And then automatically, if there was no final exam grade, the practice was automatically re-rated to 2020, 2020, 20. Now, we felt that in this case, we talked about this with the subcommittee here, that we wanted to be consistent with respect to, by doing this re-rating, in reality, we're re-weighting every course for full-year courses, we're re-weighting everything. We're putting a higher premium on the work that's being done in marking period 1, marking period 2, marking period 3, and possibly marking period 4 or not, depending on whether you went to pass, fail. If anything, by keeping the midterm at 10% there, I really think it's going to favor students in most cases because it's put a higher percent on the premium of work that's being done during the marking periods, as opposed to putting a higher percent of weight on a one-time assessment.
Now, I just wanted to just make sure that was clear because I know people had asked, but I want to also thank you guys for the incredible amount of work that you've done to put these regulations together, and so that parents and students board certainly can understand what the
and Karen, in the long term, the bottom line, if there's a final grade calculated by Aspen, and a teacher feels like that because the way it was calculated is not a fair indication of what the work the student was doing, they always have the professional right to raise that grade. They cannot lower it, but they can always raise that grade. Okay.
Again, thank you for finding ways to consistently support our students, especially during this this interesting time in their education.
All right, Ms. Downey.
I was going to go back to the point that Ms. Kowalski was just asking about the disclosure. I don't know, and Karen, are you satisfied with the answer? Because I won't give a long-winded point of view on it if you are or not satisfied.
No, you should ask the questions that you have. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that
no, Karen Kowalski.
Karen Kowalski.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No, I do have some I do have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
So if you want to
Okay,
address,
great.
then,
No,
then
that's
sure,
right.
that's fine, because I do have more questions.
Okay. Initially, I was thinking that perhaps we wanted to put some disclosure on there. However, in the process of looking at this and talking to the educators, my way of thinking has come around. I think we have to kind of look at the philosophy of the policy. Is it a policy of punishment or a policy of support? And to me, putting an asterisk kind of creates a punishment for those students. So we're kind of doubling down on the punishment to them. Whereas not putting an asterisk is support, because the whole notion of this is to support the students who are having difficulties in this time period. So having the absence of that and all transcripts looking the same achieves that goal. I think there are ways we've talked about in the policy meetings about, differentiating students who have pushed themselves to get letter grades. For example, it is in the high school profile, as Judy just said, that this was offered as an option, as it's likely to be at almost every high school in the country when in this period of time. So I think the colleges will kind of know it was a funky grading period anyway. And secondarily, because your kids are younger, every student, his or her guidance counselor writes a letter that accompanies all their college applications. And in that letter, for the kids who really pushed themselves and went and got grades, the guidance counselor can make mention of that fact and kind of promote the students who really seek to excel. So I think we have the absence of it on the transcript is not problematic to me, because I think it's covered in a number of other ways. And going back to kind of what's our goal? If you do bottom line, are we trying to help people or hurt people? And I think I would err on the side, I think we're trying to help people, and I think there's going to be, X number of students who take advantage of this, but they really need the help. And that's why I think, to me, it's better not to have it on the transcript. That's, having had extensive discussions about that. So that's my point on that.
All right, Mr. Sherr.
I just wanted to clarify what I'm hearing because I want to be sure we're accurate. We will not be disclosing with this change. The administration is saying, and the Greenwich High School is saying, they will not be disclosing to a college or university with an official transcript that an individual student has exercised pass-fail. Correct?
That's correct, Peter.
Okay. And the reason is, as Judy said, is it's more equitable to the students who take pass-fail that this disclosure is not made. That was the statement? You have to unmute, Judy.
I'm sorry. Yes, correct. There was a quote I read recently about, while we're all in the same storm, we're not all in the same boat. And I think that, if we're thinking about the most affected students, the most vulnerable, if we're looking to support their mental health, I think it's already going to be, we're hoping it's a relief that they get to choose pass fail, but I'm sure that, those college bound students who are struggling are also really thinking about, well, what is this choice going to reflect? They want the best transcript they can have as well. And I think that having an individual notation as opposed to something more global on the profile will disadvantage those that are truly in need and who need the most help right now.
And the last part I just wanted to ask is, I know this to be a fact, we already note on our official transcripts that if a student has taken modified curriculum under an IEP, that is already noted individually for every single transcript, course by course, where that occurs.
That is correct. That's from modified curriculum.
Modified curriculum, which
grading.
is essentially saying I took a modified, I'm not doing the standard curriculum, and as a result, I don't have a standard grade. So we already indicate that in our current transcripts. But we're saying in this instance, we don't want to follow that model.
Well, again, it's a model for curriculum modification, so standard.
It's a notification to a college or university on an official transcript that the student did not take normal coursework, and that colleges and universities should be aware that this thing is different. This grade is different and it has extenuating circumstances, correct?
Well, the grade is not different, but I know I'm parsing words, I'm sorry, but that the curriculum is different. That even though it might say, English, 200 or English 212, that the curriculum was modified such that it is really not the standard curriculum. And whereas opposed to, in this instance, it's about grading.
Why would we tell them that on a transcript, Judy?
So that, well, it's really to make sure that everyone is aware that the student is not taking the same course as other people.
And that the grade is to be considered accordingly?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, Ms. Olson.
Mute myself. thank you so much to PCG and the administration for all the effort and work that went into this. And I appreciate the explanation. And I also just think it's really important. Judy, I read the same Facebook feed. I read the same story about the same storm, but not in the same boat recently. And I found it impactful and sort of a good analogy to, we are in this together, but we're not in the exact same situation, every single person. And I think it's really important. I agree, it's really important that we don't disadvantage our most vulnerable students. I think you've, done a really great job on this. So I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Ms. Kowalski.
So taking the comments of, support versus punishment, I just want to flip that on its head a little bit for the fact of, let's say you have, a student who has straight A's for the 3 marking periods and that grade, and they're pushing themselves under these circumstances for that last grade and decides to go for the grade, versus the student who maybe has the same 3 A's but decides pass fail for whatever reason. Let's not judge the reason, but goes pass fail. At the end of that, the last grade on the transcript, they will both have an A average. And the difference here being that student, the first student, student A, that I mentioned, worked to get that A during this particular time. So how is not making a reference in some way, shape, or form on the transcript not punishment to them? And that's the question, but I want to just add one piece to it is Greenwich students are often competing against themselves to get into very, esteemed, schools. And if there is no distinction between those 2 grades, what is the incentive and why is it not a punishment for the one that went to go get the grade at the end than versus the student that chose the pass or the pass fail component?
Looks like Rick and Judy want to speak.
Yeah. I think first, First, I believe in the best in students. Right now, tomorrow will be day 15 into the marking period, which means we have students that have already been vested in over 33% of this marking period. And you would think, because they're not aware of this policy and the regulations that they've been given their best effort there. Second thing here is the pass-fail is for all classes. And we're talking risky business now here. If a student happens to fail, suppose they had an A if they happen to fail marking period 4, that does now go get recalculated into the final grade, which would affect the GPA. Another key thing here is I really think that for those students that are, this is actually a great opportunity to stick with the grades because it's a lot easier to increase like about a half a letter grade from an A to an A plus, or from a B minus to a B, or maybe in 1 letter grade because you're putting a heavier weight on the marking periods work. And the other thing is here, keep in mind now, I believe especially for this class of 2021, I really believe with the colleges, there might be a premium put on some of these college recommendations that are going to be written by the teachers. And a lot of these students are going to have to eventually go out.
Froze.
Did we lose somebody?
He just seems to be frozen.
I think Rick has frozen.
Okay.
All right, Rick, hopefully you're coming back to
He was going to
us.
say something good.
I knew.
It was going to be the best part. All right, let's give him a minute. I think he dropped. All right, let's just give him a moment to come back.
So let me just ask my follow-up question. Well, he's still coming back and he can answer that one. So can someone explain in greater detail to me what it means to put something in our profile and what in fact would be put into the profile?
Right, so every high school has something called a high school profile. It's fairly standardized, although there's lots of room for information that the high school would like to share. It's primarily used by colleges to accompany the transcript so that they understand the context in which the transcript is being judged. We'll have things on there like all of our courses are listed on there.
I'm sorry, I may have been, did I get lost on the computer?
You did, but that, and welcome back.
I'm just answering one quick question, Rick, not related to what you were saying. I'm just talking about the profile and it's why we have a profile. But so it basically, and it contains things like our commended students and our data about Greenwich High School, again, so that an individual college can take a look at an individual transcript. These are, well known in the relationships between high schools and colleges. College representatives look for the transcript. All high schools have to produce a transcript, to produce a profile for colleges to utilize. And I'm aware that high schools really kind of will be obligated to put something on their profile that represents what happened during this time. We'll highlight things like unique programs, unusual grading, things like that on there. So that is the standard place to put these types of things.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I think I may have lost the internet, so I don't know where did you?
So Rick, that was a different question. We took the opportunity to just for a follow-up, but if you could continue on.
Where did I lose you?
You
Or what did you lose?
mentioned that this was, that this was risky business, right? And that's where I think we left off.
So I think I said it was risky business for someone, that's been standing along and getting all A's and go to pass fail. And that if they do absolutely nothing, if they happen to get a failing grade, which is below 59.5%, that F does now get re-weighted into the final grade. That would affect their final grade, which would affect their GPA. The other thing I wanted to point out here is I truly believe that with this system, with this weighting system, that it's actually a lot easier to actually raise your grade, a final grade, by half a letter, if you keep grades, because the weighting system favors the marking period grades at a higher percent. And to me, the most important one here is the fact that all these students are going to eventually have to go to their teachers and ask for a college recommendation. And if you have a student that was going along with all A's, went to pass fail, and just basically did nothing for the rest of the marking period 4 to kind of secure that grade and secure that final grade, if I was a teacher of that particular student who's requested, I'd probably suggest maybe they should go reach out to someone else who could give them a more emphasis on some of their stronger suits, because they didn't basically make a good enough effort there to, they're trying to, game the system. So eventually all these kids are going to have to go ask for teachers for recommendations there. That's why I think most students are going to stick with grades unless it's a really extenuating circumstance.
Yeah, so that was my other question. Do we have it? And maybe it's just too early to tell, given that, we're only a third into this, but have a general sense of, I guess this goes to a previous point, that the kids don't know that there's a potential for pass fail, or is the assumption that they don't know. I would just be curious what you think the estimate of kids are that would pick pass fail to grades.
Rick, I
Can
think
we,
you're muted.
can we discount the class of 2020? The answer is,
Yeah, they're already going to college, right?
That's correct.
They've got their acceptances. This really is really impactful.
Yeah.
I think this is really just the impactful only for the junior
Yeah.
class. If I
I would say yes.
lay it out there.
But I can share this much. We had an XCOM meeting today, and I think they came up with some very good questions about graduation, about the pass-fail option. They knew nothing about any of these regulations. They knew nothing about the possibility of no final exams. So it was all news to them. So I'm quite sure it's leaked out somewhere. So I don't think too many people know anything, know much about this. So I couldn't even begin to predict, what percentage of the students are going to go for the pass-fail option. But I'm hoping that there's a really deep discussion with the parents and the guidance counselor, taking account all the factors of what's going to be the best interest for that student, not just for the final grades for this second semester in these four-year courses, but what are the implications, on the GPA and also for the whole college process in the future.
And one of the things
Mr.
that
Sherr.
made us, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Judy.
One of the things that made us feel more comfortable with offering this option is the fact that the students really have to take a hard look and make a significant decision, because it's all classes or no classes. I think that if we offer the opportunity to select an individual course for pass-fail, that would allow for much more gaming the system.
All right, Mr. Sherr.
I think we're not being realistic about the way college admissions works. The fact of the matter is that many colleges and universities that our kids go to, they have to go through the Common App. The Common App is incredibly rigid on how you can enter information. The information that's in there for GPAs is used candidly on first reads in many colleges to decide whether your application will ever get looked at, and whether or not the letters and the disclosure and the what you have from the counselor ever actually gets read and considered. You're cut in very early in that process based upon your GPA and your test scores, and in a lot of cases your test scores and now increasingly will be less considered. So this is just a reality, and I think we have our answer. For me, I don't think this was real hard. I thought we could do pass fail, properly disclose it. Everybody was protected. It gives the kids who are struggling the option that they need. I can tell you, Rick, I'd like to think the world is as you describe it. Some really smart people in Greenwich. And given that the date to make this decision is so late, I think there will be a fair number of people who will wait till the end, calculate their grades both ways, because we have taught them how to use formulas in algebra. And they'll figure out what's best for them, and they will make their decision very late. Let's hope there's not a lot of students doing that. For me, I hear the administration's point on what they think is equitable. For me, it's least common denominator schools. And this will obviously pass, but I won't be supporting it in the way that it's currently constructed. It's disappointing because I would really much like to support pass-fail. I support a pass-fail option for kids who need it, but I think the way this is constructed, it is disadvantaging. It has the potential to disadvantage certain kids, and I can't support that.
Ms. Hirsch.
Oh, I had my hand raised earlier, but I will say, just in response to what Mr. Sherr just said, I think you can look at it sort of the opposite direction too, that if we do asterisk something, I mean, it is not up to us, it is up to what the high school chooses to do. And if they put an asterisk on, we're disadvantaging other children in that same way. I know we asked this during PGC, and it was also stated, it was rather well said, that because it is in the student profile, if a college reaches out and asks if a student made that decision for the fourth quarter, that they will be able to respond to say a student chose the grading option or the pass-fail option. Am I correct on that, Judy?
Yes, that's correct. You know, we value our relationships with college admissions representatives, and that is something we would need to disclose to them about the transcript if they asked.
So the information is available. It's just not necessarily being noted on the transcript. As I know, we're trying to we don't want to judge our students' grades based on, as Ralph has consistently said, their home experience during this trying time. And I think, again, I know that you guys had said that a lot of high schools that you've reached out to are not noting it with asterisks either on their transcript.
At some of them that we spoke to, yes. I haven't heard anybody that is putting it on the transcript, but we're a little bit ahead of many places. So a lot of places haven't made a decision yet. And, you know, I also think, you know, there is the opportunity. All students have this option. You know, we are presenting these options to all students. And so they can all do, you know, the mathematical calculations that they may want to do and make a choice that's best for them. So in that way, you know, it is equitable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I was just, yeah.
It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah. No, the thing I had originally raised my hand for was just to say, I know we note on report cards oftentimes if a student does have an IEP or a 504, that the courses, it's not that the curriculum has changed, it's just simply how they access that curriculum might be slightly different than another student. However, with distance learning, that's not going to be the case. It's been pretty clear that even with our students that have learning differences, they're not able to access the curriculum in different manners currently as our, you know, every other student. So it doesn't, you know, I don't know how that argument would support adding an asterisk. That's all.
All right, Ms. Kowalski.
Yep. Thanks, Peter. Look, as I started out with the very beginning of my comments, I do support the notion of the pass-fail. I think it is right to give it to those students that are struggling. My concern, as I've raised it, is that, and you know, maybe there is no perfect structure to come up with, but I do think that there is a host of kids that are potentially being disadvantaged by the fact that there is no specific notation. We do it in other contexts. I don't know how we can say that those students that have an IEP aren't somehow disadvantaged then by making that asterisk on their report card, are not disadvantaged by making that asterisk on their report card when they've taken, they've done the class, that they've done the curriculum and they've gotten a grade, and somehow that grade is weighted differently because of that IEP, which is highlighting, a disability to them. So I'm struggling to understand the difference here. And again, I do support pass-fail. This is clearly going to pass tonight. And this particular structure is just something in this particular issue I can't seem to get across. And those that I've talked to today, I've mentioned this before, and I've thought long and hard about this particular way. And I just think that there could have been a better way to make sure that students that did choose the grades were not in some way disadvantaged by having made that choice. And I think in this context, there is a potential for them for being so.
Peter, this is Mary.
Yeah,
Forde.
go ahead, Judy.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay, go ahead,
I think
Mary.
Mary's going to answer that question. Go ahead, Mary.
Well,
That's fine. Go ahead, Mary.
That the notation of modified grade, it does not say IEP. We cannot disclose a student's special education status on their transcript. So what it does indicate is modified course. So that what it shows is that this student took a course that was modified for some reason, not necessarily only IEP. And I think most colleges know that, but they also know to ask a question when they see that the student participated in a modified course. But it does not automatically indicate, because we can't do that, that it was a student with special education services. That's why we in fact changed the transcripts away from resource room to say academic lab, because the term resource room connoted that this student was receiving special education supports.
Mary, hi, this is Karen. I appreciate that clarification, and that does make sense. But I still think that my comments still stand in the sense that what you've reaffirmed is that there is a notation made that it was modified, which is exactly what we're doing here, and would give an indication to the university or college to ask a specific question. And that's what I think is missing here.
Karen, I think you cut off. Are you still there?
No, I ended with, sorry, I ended with, that's what I think is missing here. Did that come through?
Yep,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. So this is Peter Bernstein. I'm going to jump in for a second. I think this is the right policy and the right approach. Obviously, the board does not set the regulation. We set the high-level policy, which is that we want to offer a pass-fail option to our students, to those students who need it. We have a wide spectrum of students across the board. We have high achievers. We have students that are high achievers that are struggling right now. It really runs the gamut, and we really need to make this option available to them. We are allowing the maximum amount of time possible so that those students can try to bring their grades up, so those students and their parents will have informed discussions amongst themselves and also with guidance counselors. These aren't decisions that are going to be made lightly. I pointed this out the last time we talked about this, but every high school student in America is going to have the same challenge. Every college is going to have to make determinations on how to treat this time period. Just putting an asterisk or not putting an asterisk, I think it actually creates more of an issue than not. So I'm ready to move forward, but I know we've got some other hands raised up. So Ms. Stowe.
Actually, since I was going to sort of try to wrap it up as the chair of this committee, but so let me defer to Christina and Joe first and then come back to me when everyone's done.
Will do. Christina?
Actually, Peter, you very eloquently said many of the things that I was just about to say. So I'm going to keep it very brief and say, I think it's back to what was the purpose of doing this. And we are a policy board, and our policy, we all seem to agree on, is we want to offer a pass-fail option. So again, we're getting into the weeds of the regulations. And I was going to say, I wanted to call the question.
All right, Mr. Kelly.
I will just be quick then. I think it's safe to say that all 8 of us agree on a pass-fail option. It's the details that maybe we disagree on and might not be able to vote 8-0 on. It's always good to have an 8-0 vote. Those details, I'm very happy that those details are being worked out by our professionals, Judy, Rick, and Ralph. Thank you for your input. Certainly you work with this on a day-to-day basis. You focus on this, and you certainly know a heck of a lot more about this than I do, so I'm happy to follow your lead on that. As again, I aspire for an 8-0 vote, but if we don't have that due to minor details, then so be it. Thank you.
All right, Kathleen, why don't you wrap it up and we'll call the question.
Yeah, I mean, Christina and Joe, well said. This was what I learned through this process, is because I do not have any children in the high school yet, is that these guys know what they're doing. And there's a reason that we make policies and we don't get in the weeds. And we asked all these questions in all of our policy meetings, which were public, and anyone could attend. And what I learned is that they have come up with the right mechanics, but let's go back to the policy, which we heard loud and clear from the community was what everyone wanted. It's the hybrid that people want. I think it's nice that we can, for once, sort of de-stress everyone and find a nice answer for the 4th marking period. And let's hope that this is the only time we have to do it. So with that, I'd like to call a vote. Can I take the first vote, I guess?
All right, so
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, we've got to restate the motion. So the motion on the table is to accept the COVID-19 grading policy, which is policy 6146.19. So I'll defer my vote. Ms. Stowe.
Yes.
Ms. Hirsch.
Yes.
Ms. Downey.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Kowalski,
No.
Ms. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Sherr.
No.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes 6-2. I want to thank the administration and the Policy Governance Committee for stepping into the void here and leading the way. I really hope you folks at the high school will share this information with students. I'm sure there's going to be some cheers when you spread the word about no finals. That's probably the more important part for them. But thank you for everything you've done. All right, with that, we are going to move on to our next item, which is a discussion item. It's our budget and finance update. So just to set the stage here, we have an interim appropriation pending right now for the current budget year, the 2019-2020 budget year. I'd like to talk about that first, and then we can talk about our budget that was pending before the Board of Estimate and Taxation. So with that, Tony, I'll turn it over to you and Sean, and maybe you can talk about where we are in the interim.
Yeah, and I'll actually, Sean, if you'd like to take it since you're prepared for the update tonight.
Sure. As you know, at the end of March, we submitted a request for a $1.2 million interim appropriation. And since that time, you know, as I've said at the last meeting, the world has changed quite a bit. And as a result, the request was deferred to the May meetings for the BET and the RTM to give us some more time to identify savings that could potentially offset the exposure we have to the budget. I'm happy to report that at this point in time, and I'm still scrubbing numbers, but I feel very, very comfortable that we have enough closure-related savings and other savings from the freeze that we implemented in February to say that we have enough that we should not proceed with the interim.
Tony, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, I think, we're monitoring every aspect of the budget. So, between substitute costs and those items that we just simply don't have to utilize right now while we're closed. I do think with the bus contract, there's a timing element there, obviously. And I know that we're trying to be as aggressive as we can so that we can get that issue resolved.
Yeah, as it relates to transportation.
Any board Go ahead, Sean.
I'm sorry. Just touching quickly on transportation. I don't want to go into too many details since we're still in negotiation, but I will say that, a good portion of the savings is in that category, along with utilities, substitutes, and supplies underruns. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for continuing to do that work. I know we have some of our friends from the RTM on tonight, as well as the BET, but we will communicate back with them about how we take those forward or not. And obviously, the more detail when you're ready to share, we'll do that. All right, so that leads us to the next portion of our discussion, which is around our budget request for 2020-2021. For those not following at home, and we now have 283 additional attendees for a total of 301 participants, which I think is a new all-time high, and I'm guessing that's why many of you are here. For those following at home, last week the Board of Estimate and Taxation held a public hearing early in the week. On Thursday, they held a budget workshop where they discussed potential cuts to various parts of the town government, including the Board of Education. Over the weekend, Dr. Jones and Mr. O'Keefe put some information together for the BET. BET had a 10-hour decision day on Monday, where they voted on a number of cuts to operating and capital projects across the town, including the Board of Ed. So our proposed budget was cut by $3 million, which was the amount of the increase that we requested, as well as a number of capital projects where there were some changes and some deferrals to future years. Obviously, this has caused a lot of consternation in the community. I know the BET has received a number of emails. We just today received a large number of emails as well. It is here, and Dr. Jones, I'm going to turn it over to you, and maybe you want to start the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously, my understanding is we'll really know Monday if this is the final number. And I think that we will sit back and see what happens through then. But we are obviously working, I mean, immediately when I heard about this on Thursday, we started going through the budget and literally line by line, just to try to get a better understanding of the magnitude of what would need to come out of the budget, where those different areas could be. And, you know, we're not going to leave any stone unturned, and we didn't. What I submitted on Saturday to the BET was a memo, just trying to outline what some of those reductions could be. And we got up to about 728,000, with just giving them some examples of items that could be reduced in the budget. But again, once we really know if this is where we're sitting, and as a reminder, it's not 3 million, because we already have this special education gap in the budget next year that we know. It's really closer to 4.5 million, and it is a big number. And so, you know, when we talk about the budget increase is needed because we have fixed costs and contract obligations that are part of every school district. It's not just Greenwich. And that's why when we came in at 2%, our fixed costs were already higher than 2%. So we had to do a lot of culling of the budget before we could even get to the 2%. So it is a challenge. And I said that, I think, already, you know, before. It will be a challenge. And we'll do everything that we can and deal with what we have to as we go forward. But I'm going to stay optimistic through Monday. I'll leave it there, Peter, unless there's something else you want me to discuss.
No, that's all right. I see Miss Downey, you've got your hand up. We'll start with you.
Ooh, I get to be first. Tony and Sean, at the outset, I just want to thank you for quickly responding as best you could under kind of unforeseen, crazy circumstances by crunching numbers and working so hard. And we really appreciate the effort that the two of you have put in. And it was good work too. I mean, it wasn't just like throwing something together. At the outset, I just want to say I am personally deeply concerned about the BET budget vote, because in terms of a negative impact on our school's ability to meet the needs of all of our students, in particular the operating budget. I think the capital budget is what it is. I want to focus on the operating budget. Mm-hmm. I've participated in and followed the town budgeting processes probably more than the average citizen, and there's probably a lot of people listening in now who are new to this. But after years of on the PTAs and being a member of the RTM, you realize how long and unwieldy it is. But there are processes in place to allow ample opportunity for the public to weigh in on their priorities and their views on issues. We hear it in our board budget discussions. I do have to express my frustration and my disappointment in how the BET's budget process transpired in the last 10 days, because only after the final public hearing on Monday, April 20th, did we even get advised of the cuts to operating expenses that the budget committee was proposing. So as a result, we on the board were not able to have meaningful input into the budget process in a manner that might have minimized the reduction made by the BET when it voted on the 27th, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, it was a 7-6 vote. So not a unanimous budget. In addition to us, the taxpayers in town were also denied the opportunity to comment on those proposed reductions to the operating budget. Those taxpayers clearly care about the issue. As I've heard, they've bombarded the BET with maybe 1,000 emails, I've heard is the number, in the span of only a few days between the budget committee meeting and the BET's vote. And I applaud all those taxpayers who will now hopefully be engaged on a going forward basis and focused on what our processes are. we are elected town officials along with the BET, and I really think we should be working together, particularly in this difficult time, to come to solutions that make sense. I would have appreciated the opportunity for us to have a dialogue, a two-way conversation, not just a one-sided conversation about how to tackle these cost issues facing us. Perhaps we can do so going forward, whether it's short-term or long-term. So those are my thoughts and my reaction to what's transpired.
Thank you. Ms. Hirsch?
Sorry, thanks. I just wanted to also make a statement. I have to say I was very disappointed by the BET's decision to reduce our operating budget by $3 million, as it could truly impact our students and their education for years to come. The Board of Ed has been asked to find ways to reduce the operational budget for the past several years, barely keeping services level. Last year, the only way the Board of Ed was able to meet the budget number given to us was to change the FTE, which possibly increased class sizes at some of our middle schools and high schools, excuse me. And we had to remove most of the funding for professional learning for educators. These types of reductions are not sustainable for the long term if we want to see academic improvement. I think that we are all aware our town does not have unlimited funds, especially now, and that we have many competing demands. But our students are facing true unknowns when it comes to their future. We don't know exactly what when our schools will reopen, what educational delivery will look like once they do reopen, how the change to distance learning will impact our students, what types of gaps they might have in their education, and what type of social, emotional support our students and educators might need as we move forward. I really would like to thank the members of the BET for ensuring that there will be funds for special education study next year, as supporting the social, emotional, and academic development of all of our students is a monumental task that requires time, dedication, and appropriate funding, even in the best of times. So while the BET is responsible for the proper administration of the financial affairs of the town, the Board of Ed is expected to advocate for the appropriate educational opportunities for district students and to represent educational interests of our students in the public schools. However, we are all elected officials with the same overall goal of finding ways to support the needs of our town and members of our community. With that in mind, I truly am hopeful that we can find a way to work together with the BET to revise our budget to support the needs of our schools. No matter what the end result is, I do have full faith that we, together with the educational community, will find ways to ensure that we meet the needs of all of our students, staff, and parents.
Thank you. Ms. Olson, you've got your hand up next.
Yep. I ditto. These cuts are devastating. Really devastating. And I can just say that however these cuts are implemented, as a teacher, I know that it will impact the classroom. And really, at the core of it, it's going to have a detrimental effect on student wellness and achievement. I'll be brief. That's all I've got right now.
Other board members? Not seeing hands. I guess I'll just say, because I know some BET members are dialed in, I would ask you to please go back to continue discussion. I think there's some middle ground here to be found. I really do. I really was hoping that would happen at your meeting the other day, but you do have the opportunity to meet again. I think if you posted your meeting tomorrow, that would give you the chance to meet on Monday. I really do think there ought to be a discussion amongst yourselves with us to find that space. I know I can speak for myself. I am not unwilling to try to help find that middle ground. I don't know that there's a board member that is. But we'd like to have that opportunity. So I'd please ask the BET to, to listen to the community, to think about it amongst themselves and really find that space because we really are under pressure with our existing budget. It was a budget that did cut teachers from classrooms. That was a point that was well taken in the last year when we developed it. One thing we cut in addition to professional development was curriculum development. Those are the two biggest levers in moving a district forward. And we've now taken those off the table. And now we're basically looking at deeper and wider cuts. Ms. Stowe.
Peter, I echo what you were saying. This is we're in a new world. There's no doubt about that. And we need to adjust every day. We're doing that in business. We're doing that with our kids at home. We're doing that with our families. Like, you know, every day is a new story, right? So I get that. And we all know, like, Megan's the teacher, I'm the financial person. So I appreciate that we need to think about how this is certainly devastating to many economically. But there has to be a middle ground, right? And one of the things, and I just want to clarify something for the record. I know there's been some misstatements out there, like, you know, support academics over sports and, you know, and things like that. And I think some people are maybe getting operating and capital mixed up a little bit. And I just want that to be clear, because the 3 million or 4.5 million, whatever you want to call it, that's operating. Capital's also been adjusted, but it's not like, you know, doing a stadium is in capital, and our sort of ongoing operations are obviously in operating. But what I do think is clear is that we need to do something, and I just don't think it could be as much as has been put out there. So if we could find something that's a little bit more doable. I know Tony and Sean seem to be always just so positive and willing to work hard to find solutions. And I know, as that chair of the budget committee, I'd love to help find some solutions. And so what I really just think is that we need to get everyone talking, and that's the BET, that's us, that's our administration. But let's not waste time, and let's do what's right for our students and our town. Thanks.
Mr. Sherr.
I guess I have a different view on this. I'm counting my blessings today. I've looked around Connecticut. I mean, just some real facts, right? We have 30 million people out of work in the United States. Connecticut has the second highest unemployment rate of 50 states. The only one who's beating us is Michigan by 0.3%. 1 in 5 Connecticut people is out of work. And, you know, this isn't a reality. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Obviously, this isn't a reality that anybody likes. But I'm actually pretty thankful, because I'm watching what's happening in other school districts. You know, there are other school districts in Connecticut who are already cutting their budgets below what school systems were given in 2020. Obviously, it would have been great if the BET would have increased our budget year on year. They didn't. They made a difficult decision in the face of some probably difficult and unknown financial conditions. But you don't have to be much of a genius. I was on the board during 2008 and 2009, and this looks like a cakewalk compared to that. Or that looked like a cakewalk compared to this. And, you know, they protected funding. And that's what's happened here. They protected funding. They didn't actually cut us. They said, you just get the same amount of money you had last year. Oh, and by the way, which we don't like to talk about because it's not on our budget, they fully covered the 7% increase in healthcare. You know, we like to talk about 163 million. The fact of the matter is, on an operating basis, schools in this town cost almost $200 million. And they took care of our teachers and our employees on their healthcare and their rapidly rising healthcare expenses. So yes, I would have liked them to fully fund the teacher raises and the administrator raises that are in the contracts. And I would have liked them to have done that. But they didn't. They just said, you get the same amount of money year on year. And this is consistent with what's happened before. By the way, I was here the last time when the state of Connecticut cut the legs off of our contributions. And I can remember some of the same people on the BET who were then on the Board of Ed who would not speak out against the cuts that came from Hartford because of the political party that was involved in that. So I think we need to be a little careful with the rhetoric. This is a time when cool heads are needed, intelligent, thoughtful, calm leadership is needed. And, I think it's also a little disingenuous, and I don't think it's helpful for our long-term reputation to, in the slightest way, try to paint the Board of Estimate and Taxation, who are also fellow elected officials, as has been implied, that they didn't inform us, blindsided us, we didn't know this was coming, what have you. We all know that there is formal and informal communication that goes on all the time. The idea that we couldn't see this potentially coming, based on the indications of the BET members that all of us are talking to, is really not a fair portrayal of what transpired. So I think what we should do proactively and with leadership is we should be looking inside the Board of Ed, and however that's done, either through the board committee of the budget committee, which I think the board needs to be intimately involved in this, not just wait for the administration to give us their answers. The board needs to be leading. And what we need to do is we need to instruct and guide the superintendent, who is still new and doesn't really understand the context of Greenwich. Sean is even newer and doesn't understand the context of Greenwich. And we need to evaluate all of the options that we have to live within the budget that the BET is giving us. Some of the things we need to discuss is we need to have an open conversation with our employees about whether or not they'll take their raises next year. Of course, we're obligated to do that by contract. Of course, they would expect to get their raises per the contract. We'd like to give them to them, but nobody expected we'd be in near depression conditions economically. I think we should be having thoughtful conversations about our enormous busing contract. Our bus routes cost us almost $10 million for transporting our students and the other students of Greenwich that are attending private schools. And we may need to redo our bus routes. We may need to make a series of really hard decisions that minimize impact to the classroom. We've got to get all these choices and options on the table, and the board needs to very clearly indicate before we hit July 1, when this budget will go live, what we want the superintendent to do and what we want our staff to do. And it's great if people want to go continue to have a dialogue with the BET. I think we should always do that. I've been very uncomfortable over the past few years with what has emerged as a very confrontational tone from us on a variety of issues with the BET. I'm glad people are now calling for collaboration and cooperation. And we should leverage that and do that with them and help them understand even more deeply than they do the ins and outs of the operations of a $200 million budget and where decisions can be made as we go forward. We need to look at the BET as a partner, not an adversary. It's not in the long-term interest of our schools to behave and operate with the BET any other way than that. The same goes with the RTM. We need to recognize, folks, for those of us, I have kids in school, so of course I care about schools. I'm a user. We all are. Nearly everybody sitting here is. But at the same time, we also need to acknowledge that more than half of the households in Greenwich, it's one of the highest percentages, or said the lowest percentages, of households with school-age children of any district throughout Connecticut we've got a lot of people in town who are paying for schools at the very high rate of funding that we already have. And we need to be sure that we don't lose sight when we're just worried about ourselves and our kids in schools, that there are other people who are strongly supporting good schools, and that we need them to continue to strongly support the level of investment that is made in schools. So I hope we'll just take all that into account calmly and thoughtfully as we face this continuing challenge.
Mr. Kelly, you're up.
Thank you. We put together a fair budget. There was talk in the budget committee about possibly maybe padding the numbers a little bit, but we decided in the committee not to do that. We said, if the number's 6, let's put 6 forward, and that's what we did. Times have changed. Things are different. We have to adjust to that. I was criticized in the last couple of meetings talking about how we have to take into consideration that we are experiencing unique times, and some of the teachers could not give us as good a product as maybe some other teachers could. And I went to the defense of the teachers in that case, because people were calling saying they want more from their distance learning. Well, you know what? Our finance board, the BET, has told us from a different angle now that we are going through a pandemic financially. So basically, we have to adjust. We have some very smart people on our BET with tremendous experience, great citizens of Greenwich. I would have rather they all agreed on the number they put forward. It's always better when we have agreement, but in this case here, a decision was made by the majority of the BET to cut our budget or reduce our budget by the amount put forward. In 6 months' time, we'll look back and we'll decide whether this reduction to our budget is a good decision or a bad decision. We're in unprecedented times. In these unprecedented times, we all have to work together. If I was paid to operate or work on the Board of Ed, I would certainly give that money back right now. I'm not paid, so I'm not giving anything back because I'm not giving anything. We all have to work together. We have to look at our budget, our school. We have to figure out how to possibly weather the storm we're going through. We don't know how bad it's going to be. Unemployment at 15%, salaries down by 30%. Is that going to get worse? Are we going into a recession? The optimists, I know Kathleen and I are the tremendous optimists. We're very happy about talking about, is it going to be a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery? When we talk, we don't talk about the possibility of a depression, recession. We don't say those things, but they're a possibility. So only 6 months now will we know if the decision by the BET was a good decision or a bad decision. So basically, we're going to have to go at this thing because we don't understand where the end is. We don't understand how much this is going to cost us. We don't understand if we've under-reduced or over-reduced the amount of money. So we have to adjust. We have to take their advice. We have to work with what they've given us. If maybe a little pushback and find some more compromise. As I said, I always look for compromise, and my fellow board members will understand that nobody works harder for compromise than I do. And basically, the BET, if they could have found compromise or even readdress finding compromise, that would be great. But if we can't, if the decision is as such, we have to adjust. We're in unique times, and we have to work together.
Thank you. Ms. Kowalski?
Sure, thanks, Peter. Let me start by saying that a decade ago, my husband and I made a decision to move to Greenwich for the schools. And if I had to make that same decision today, I'd still move to Greenwich. I have great confidence in our schools and our teachers. I think we need to take a step back for a minute and realize that we are in trying times. The unemployment rate has skyrocketed. Those that are currently employed carry the concern that their jobs may be hanging on by a thread. I think we need to be clear, our budget is flat, and we managed to provide, and I don't mean the collective we, because I had nothing to do with it, but our teachers and administration managed to provide a stellar, what I would call a gold standard education to 9,000 plus students in 2020 on the same budget. We have 163 million to provide an education, and we have great teachers. I think it's a little unfair to talk about it being devastating and to our education and to our students, and our education of them will be hampered or somehow impacted on years to come. I believe that's short-sighted and not giving full credit to the teachers and community that is Greenwich and what we continue to do. I have great confidence in the teachers and in the staff that we will continue to provide a gold standard of education on any budget that we have, because we are Greenwich. Our budget, I think it's important to note, has been less affected than our surrounding communities. And I think that's because we as a community have decided that being fiscally responsible is important. The town has made tough decisions, and we may have to make further tough decisions, but we need to stick together as a community. You know, we are all elected officials, as is the BET, who are volunteers trying to evaluate and look at all of the information that's provided them and making the best decision possible. I guarantee you that there was no ill intent or malice in deciding that budgets for 2021 needed to be froze. These decisions are not made lightly or without consternation and a lot of thought and discussion. And I think we need to remember that. I think the next steps are for we as a board, we should begin our talks internally, and we need to look at our budget, and we need to ask ourselves questions as to how we can manage through these difficult times collaboratively with each other, with our administration, with the teachers, and with the BET to make sure that we're making the right decisions for our students. And I'd like to emphasize that I think, our students are our most valuable asset. I've said that before. I said that back in October before the election, and I believe that today. I believe that we will continue as a board and as our teachers and administration and as the town funding $163 million, that we can and will continue to provide a stellar, what I like to call the gold standard education to our students. And now we just need to be creative. We're smart, we're intelligent people that have all come to the table, and we need to look to those attributes to continue what we've always done.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stowe?
I think we're all trying to find, some sort of compromise, and Joe and I do. We obviously both have a financial background, so I think we think very similarly, which is nice. So we do have to find sort of some compromise, and I think that it should be done through the budget committee. I have the joy of chairing the policy committee. It looks like my job is done there for the night. So now I get to chair the budget committee, and I think that, I know Joe's on that, and actually I think Peter, you are, and Peter, you brought up a really great point. There's a lot of things we need to look at. And I love that you brought up transportation, because I wasn't on the board, but I believe you were on the board when we went to later start time, and that added over $1 million in our transportation. I actually was looking at transportation the other day, given our bus contract, and it was well over $1 million. So we're gonna have to think a lot about transportation as we go back anyway, if they're talking about different schedules, but that might be one of the places we need to look. We would have to look at maybe the music program. Maybe we do have to look at sports. I don't know, but there's a lot of places we need to look, because it's a big number, and but over $1 million was a big decision at that time too. So we'll work all these things out. We can't work them all out ourselves, but these are the conversations we should start having in the budget committee and with Sean and with Tony. Hopefully, and then we can hopefully all come to the table, and hopefully the BET comes back to the table and tries to find a compromise as well. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Olson?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to something. We as a community actually did not decide fiscal responsibility is of utmost importance here. 6 bipartisan Republican members of the BET decided that. So I think what we need to do is actually look to Tony Jones as the Board of Education, who is our superintendent and our highly qualified leader, as well as Sean O'Keefe. And I think we need to read Tony Jones' memo again for those of us that missed it on what would need to be cut in addition to the response from the BET. Yeah, it is. It has a devastating impact on, and I am all for moving forward, compromising, but at this point, the way this cut stands at this point, no matter how it's implemented, will have and does have, it's a fact, a devastating impact on the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students in Greenwich Public Schools.
Peter?
Yeah, I was just going to say, make a separate appeal. And, you know, I've said this publicly today. The success, Greenwich government has always worked because people have always worked together despite the fact that we have party designations and we have different points of view. But it has always worked because we've been able to, even though we may disagree on policy, we've been able to work together in a non-confrontational way. I realize, you know, like Sean and Tony, you guys come from different places. Tony, you know, we talked about this over lunch the first day you were here. Greenwich is a different place. It's a pretty special place. It's a place where people are really generous. But we really don't like as a community, and I'm not suggesting this about you, Tony, I'm just saying in general, we really don't like Washington-style politics here. It never works. It always backfires. In the time I've been serving in town government, we're all volunteers. None of these are careers. They're things we do because we give back and we love our community. So to be candid, I would hope that all of us would not, we would resist the temptation to slide into vilifying people, really dragging in party politics to this. And I would ask the public too, to be careful. The number of rumors that are completely unfounded, that have been flying around, raising anxiety with parents unnecessarily, is astounding to me. There's been no discussion in the board that I know of closing a school. There's no discussion I know of that says eliminating the ALP program. And I can't imagine, I mean, the 8 of us might not agree, and you know, we don't necessarily have to like each other. But I know we're all doing the work of Greenwich Public Schools in the interest of kids. And I haven't heard one person amongst us who I could imagine would suggest eliminating the ALP program as an example. So we kind of have an obligation not to feed and tune up the public. This is a part where we need to be the steady hand. We need to provide thoughtful leadership. We need to guide our new employees who may not understand the dynamic in Greenwich and what's acceptable here. I was astounded today to see, it was sent to me, someone circulating a wanted poster with the faces and names of 6 members of the BET. And they think that's clever. A wanted poster, if you can imagine such a thing, in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now, I will tell you, Kathleen, you referenced start time. I can remember a couple of out-of-hand parents who, when some of us were making decisions that they disagreed with about start time, they posted on Facebook page, my face, Gaetan Francis' face, a Republican and a Democrat, with a bullseye on our face, a sharpshooter bullseye on our face. Okay, that kind of stuff just is not helpful. And we need to respect our colleagues based upon the decisions that they make, agree with them or don't. But it's really important that we model what we expect from students And we can't say, don't bully, don't cyberbully, don't raise, have thoughtful, intelligent, well-reasoned debate. But it's important that we and all the other people involved in this challenge in town government do the same. So I appeal to all of us, our better selves, and I appeal to the public and those people who like to, not on the board, but elsewhere, like to engage in political muckraking. Please knock it off. We have serious issues that the town is facing, and it's important that those of us who you elected to represent us can do that in a thoughtful and intelligent and calm way.
All right, Ms. Hirsch.
I just wanted to sort of respond and say that, we've been sort of looking at budgets across the state of Connecticut. And while not everybody has voted on theirs yet, there are districts that are approving increased budgets for the Board of Education. So it is not unheard of. I know that both Wilton and Westport, their Board of Education budgets are up. Wilton and Weston. Westport is still in the discussion. They still have a 3% increase to their Board of Ed budget on the table. So I do think that it is a possibility. We are, as a board, every single one of us have said we have a new economic reality in front of us, that we are cognizant of the fact that we may need to have reductions to the Board of Ed budget that we approved and submitted to the BET. But I think it's really important that we are not, as a board, turning against one another. We need to work together. We need to work with other elected officials, which I believe I said earlier as well. We're here for the same reason. We're here to support our schools. We're here to support our community. We're here to support our town and one another. I think that that's what makes Greenwich such an incredible community overall. I know it's why I moved here, certainly. And I just really would like to make sure that going forward, that is really the way we comport ourselves. I think it is important to say if we disagree with the choice that is made, we have that opportunity to have a voice to say that. But, it is important that we do try to support our colleagues in the decision they made. But it is also important to advocate for the things that we need and do so in a respectful manner. And I do hope that we have the opportunity to kind of go back to the table and see what we can do to find a way forward.
Thank you. So I'll try to close this out. I, for one, enjoy the parent engagement. I think it's an important part of what we do. We don't operate in a vacuum. We were voted in by the people of this town. We are responsible to them. And I think that everybody should listen. Now, I do believe that they should behave with our school norms, be here, be safe, be honest, care for self and others, and let go and move on. They apply to all of us. They should apply to our parents as well. But I think we do need to listen to them. I think it is a voice that we do have to pay attention to. I do want to make clear, I said this last week when this was discussed very lightly at our meeting. It wasn't a question of whether we were going to get cut. It was a question of how much. I still believe that there's an opportunity to work with the BET to find that middle ground. I do want to say, though, in many respects, we are looking in every corner. We're looking in every option. The negotiations committee is reaching out to our labor unions to have those discussions. We are looking at various options. Those options, though, are all on the table. None of those options are going to immediately close a $3 million hole in our budget. This will take time. It will take effort. It will take the 8 of us through negotiations committee, budget committee, the full board. I want to compliment Tony and Sean. While it's been pointed out several times, you're both new to the district. You have adapted amazingly well to our town. You have received very positive comments from many members of many other parts of this town government. And that's a testament to both of you. You've rolled your sleeves up. You haven't gotten upset. You've really kind of led the way on this. And I for one, want to say thank you, and I appreciate that. I want the community to hear that loud and clear. This is a time for us to come together as a team, not as a couple of members of the board or the full board of against the superintendent or against the BET. This is a time for people to come together as a town. That involves all of us. So be prepared to roll your sleeves up, folks. We are in it together. We're going to get through it. We all do have the students at the heart of this, and we just need to move forward. With that said, this will not be the last time we discuss the budget as a board. You know, again, I will a personal plea to the BET members that are on and their friends that are listening. Please, please call us, have conversations, talk to each other. We really do want to find a way to move forward. And we understand there's going to be cuts. I personally said that. I will say it as many times as I have to. But we need to find a better path forward, because for our planning purposes, we are going to be coming back to school. I wish this year, I don't know that for a fact, but we are going to be coming back in a very different way. And we need to be prepared for that. And knowing what our budget is in place and having a little bit of security in terms of our staff is going to be a very important thing. With that, Mr. Kelly, I don't know if you have a motion.
I do. I motion to adjourn.
Great. I'll second that. I'm going to take a quick roll call vote. Bernstein is a yes. Ms. Stowe?
Yes.
Ms. Stowe?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Ms. Downey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Kowalski?
Yes.
Ms. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Sherr?
Peter, beforehand we go,
Peter, we've got a motion on the floor to adjourn. Are you a yes or no?
classic. No.
Your hand was up after the motion, Peter. All right, okay, you're a no. It passes 7-1. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.